Let's talk some Ragin Cajuns football with Ragin Reviews, Nick Domingue. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's talk a little Ragin Cajuns football. They're hosting the Marshall Thundering Herd. A lot going on with the Sunbelt Championship game. We bring in one of the co-hosts of Ragin Review. He is Nick Domingue. Nick, you've never looked so good. Thanks for hopping on Locked On Sunbelt, and how are you?
Hey, man, I was sure to put on my makeup for the camera today. No, thank you for being patient with me, sir. One, it's an honor to be on here with you. I think you do great work for the Sunbelt as a whole, so thanks for inviting me. And number two, as we tried to get this done last night because of internet complications, the best I can do right now is voice, but we're saving all of your viewers from having to see that. So I think we're in a good spot.
Hashtag always a bright side.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about what you guys thought about coming into the season, because I thought they were, my thought was kind of everyone's first thought was, oh my God, 8.5 wins. Are they that good? Are they overrated? And then are they contenders? Because I kept on going through the position groups and like, oh, offensive line is good. Defensive line is good. Defensive backfield is good. Wide receivers may be the youngest, but they're pretty good. Tight ends are going to be good. Running backs are really good. The only question is the quarterbacks. And the question was staying healthy, and Ben Wooldridge stayed healthy for the most part. And Chandler Fields has been pretty good, filling in after Ben got hurt. Kevin Foote didn't think they exceeded expectations. This team was really good. And the guy saying it was the head coach. He told me and Kevin on the record and off the record, he's like, we got to win this year because we got a lot of good players.
Yeah, and I think, look, I had this team as seven or 8 wins. Didn't think they'd blow it out the water, but because we've always had the talent. I'd say maybe the first year or second year we were rebuilding and reloading talent, but last year you felt you had the talent. We just couldn't get over the hump of winning close games. And I think that's the difference that you see in this year's squad is that you had a lot of experience in the positions that mattered and maturity. And you saw, earlier in the season, a couple of close games that last year we kept saying that's not going to go our way last year. This year it is, So the ability for us to pull out those close wins, I think, is the big difference. Having the maturity between Ben and now Chandler and the experience at both quarterbacks was huge. I mean, Ben was playing his mind out throughout the season, and then Chandler comes in and picks up right where he left off. And then, as you mentioned, guys like Carmichael Glass, guys like Tyrone Lewis, Tyree Skipper in the secondary, the linebacking core, they've just been so great. Narcisse on the defensive line, they've just been doing their job, game in and game out. So it's really just been impressive what they've been able to do with pretty much the same players as last year, but being able to put it together and win those close games, I think, is the big difference between 2023 and 2024.
Well, up until the South Alabama game, the quarterback had stayed healthy, right? For the last 2 years, they've had 3 quarterbacks play compared to, Billy Napier in his last 3 years had 1 quarterback start all 3 years. And you're right. They came away with some close victories. Southern Miss was a close victory. Obviously, Wake Forest was a close victory. And a fingernail was the difference between, beating Texas State and maybe losing to Texas State. What do you think is that difference? Because it is amazing. And Mike Desormeaux brought that up. They in that 13-1 season, they won a lot of close ball games. I'm not sure they played all that well for like 3.5 quarters, but Levi Lewis would hit like a 60-yard pass and boom, they'd win.
Yeah, I think you see a lot of that team in this team. And I think, again, it goes back to the maturity, the culture that was really laid, the foundation that was laid here by Napier. And then, think about the play calling offensively. We pulled our hair out so many times with Billy Napier during those, few years that he was with us. And we kind of do the same sometimes with Dez. He'll take a chance, like you saw against South Alabama on 4th down in our own red zone, instead of, just taking the 3 points, which would have, could have ended up being a difference in that game because we lost by 2. He went for it and then did make it. So you feel like it's almost like one of the final years of having a Napier here, because a lot of the play calling, a lot of the attitude, a lot of the culture, the way the guys conduct themselves professionally, there are no locker room distractions. You notice that last couple of years there might have been 1 or 2 there, none this year. So I think just in general, there's strong leadership. There are some really, really good 5th, 6th-year seniors on this team, and I think they've really embraced that role in again, knowing that they have a chance to win rather than playing not to lose. I think that's what you're seeing this year versus last year too.
Talking to Nick Domingue from Ragin Review here. Him and Jerry Abair do a fantastic job covering the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. All right, so what game was it that you realized this team was pretty good? Was it Wake? Because, they lost that Tulane game, which was unfortunate. I kind of go back to Cortland Flowers, but obviously not all his fault. Was there a game that you said, oh, this team may have it?
I think it was Tulane. I think when you saw the talent on Tulane's side of the ball, there was no denying that they were one of the better teams in FBS. And I knew going into the Wake Forest game, we should have been favored. I mean, I thought we would win that game, no problem. So I would really think it was that Tulane game because of the way we played. We were still in it outside of a couple of turnovers or a turnover, and then that the run back on the kickoff.
Right.
Outside of that, man, we went toe to toe with one of the better teams in FBS. So I knew at that point this is a different looking team. The way we were composed, still in it to win it. That was the game.
Talking to Nick Domingue, Ragin Review. We are starting to see some guys leave. Ahmad Hardy from ULM announced his departure. The Cajuns were very fortunate last year, had a couple of key losses, but not a whole lot. I'm not sure there were more than a half a dozen guys that left, and their biggest, guys coming in was a defensive lineman and a punter, which they needed. We still have a full backfield. I think all 3 guys still have eligibility left. Who are you concerned that may decide to seek greener pastures, so to speak?
I wouldn't say concerned, but if there's somebody, I'm looking at Zylan Perry. I mean, with his speed, he's got P5 speed, and he's got the ability to see the field, and splitting time with Bill Davis obviously will skew his numbers a little bit. But hell, you look at their stats and they're both over 5 yards a carry. So, if I'm looking at one guy on the team, I'm concerned about it, Zylan Perry. Hopefully we can hold on to him because he's, to me, is a difference maker on this team.
And would you say the same thing for Robert Williams?
Yes, 1,000%. But I didn't want to say it out loud and speak it into existence.
Right. Right. Well, so we'll see. It is, unfortunately, it is what it is. So what do you know? I mean, they're trying, right? I mean, obviously funds are limited in Lafayette. If we know the school across the basin is having issues, and that's a different kind of money level, we understand that, but they're competing on their level and the Cajuns are trying to compete on their level. How is the NIL doing in Lafayette for the Ragin Cajuns?
My understanding is going well, and we use that money to retain players, not to recruit them. So I think that's a great strategy set up by Des, and so far that's been pretty successful. You're going to lose guys, with a lot of talent like Zion Chris, who are, you look at the tape and you're like, holy cow.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I think our NIL is just where it needs to be for now. But there's always room for improvement, and they're starting to crank that up a little bit. They know the importance of NIL, especially in Lafayette, Louisiana, where we're competing against teams like a Texas State, who is going to build up that war chest if they stay in the Sun Belt, of course. JMU, right? Georgia State. So those guys are going to, have a war chest that they're building up, especially with Southern Miss. Those are going to be our top rival. We got to keep up with those guys, and they're doing a good job. So I think we're on the right track, but I like the way he set it up with NIL is used to retain, not to attract talent. I love the way he's doing that. And again, so far it's been good for us, but fingers crossed we're able to retain a lot of that talent again this year.
All right, we're talking with Nick Domingue from Ragin Review podcast that covers the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. We'll get to Mike Desormeaux. There seems to be one Sunbelt head coach going to coach another Sunbelt team, which is absolutely fascinating and yet great for content. We will do that when we come back after I tell you about Better Together. Hate the team you drafted in season-long fantasy, but want to stay in the action? Introducing Better Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb the leaderboard together. So grab a friend and join the solely social daily fantasy movement at Better Together. Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy application. Better Together provides a sense of camaraderie and enhances the social experience of watching sports. Makes you realize that DFS is fun alone, but like a lot of other things, it's better with friends. It's a way to stay connected with friends when you can't watch sports together in person, and put your group chat to the test and lets you prove yours is the best. Download Better Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code Locked On for a chance to play in a contest with me. Because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. That's Bettor, Nick. Get it? Better Together.
Oh, that's clever. I like that.
It is Dave Schultz on Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We're talking with Nick Domingue with Ragin Review, a podcast that covers the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. All right, so before we get to Mike Desormeaux, let's talk about the elephant in the room because it is fascinating. We're talking before the show about Mike Desormeaux's contract. I think he signed a 5-year deal. He's wrapping up his 3rd year. By the way, he's gone to a bowl game each of the first 3 years. Hasn't won one yet, but you know what? Before we start that, is this the golden era of Ragin Cajuns football? Because I know they had some big wins and had some big-time players before, mostly a quarterback, but and maybe a certain wide receiver who's a sports talk show host out in Denver. But, I mean, they have gone – how many bowl games have they gone to since, like, 2011, right? They've missed on, like, 2 years?
Yeah, it's been great. Is this the golden era? Hindsight is 2020, right? So we'll be able to tell you that in 10 years, but so
there
far,
hasn't been they haven't had this kind of run ever, right? I mean, this was
not at
HUD
all.
started
No.
this. HUD turned it around in 2011, went to 2 bowl games. Of course, they've dominated the New Orleans Bowl. I think they've gone to 7 New Orleans Bowls.
Yeah, something like that. But
Yep.
no, it started with HUD, you know, and he made it a regular thing for us to party in New Orleans. And you know, some of the fans were a little bit turned off by the possibility of going back because we've been so many times, but you can't. I always tell our fans, especially now when we're 10-2, appreciate the moment because these moments don't last forever. We saw it a couple years ago that we made bowl games, but we underperformed to our expectations. So look,
Right.
we're just me as a fan. I'm trying to enjoy the moment. I'm trying to enjoy 10-2, hopefully winning a championship, and then seeing where that takes us. But I think if you see us in that playoff talk in the next couple of years in the hunt for that playoff spot, then I think we can definitely solidify it. But to answer your question, as a whole, over the last 120 somewhat years, yes,
Sure.
this has definitely been about 12 years of greatness. But we still have a little ways to go. We still have some goals that we want to achieve. So don't let off the gas. Keep it going and make this the norm, not the exception.
All right, yeah, because I just wanted to make sure, we know, Stokely and Brian Mitchell and
Delhomme,
Delhomme,
Ike
Jake
Taylor,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you could go down the list.
Sure.
Ike Taylor, insane.
Ike
The
Taylor,
talent
right.
we had. Yeah.
Right. Charles Tillman, certainly.
Yep.
And so meanwhile, we got a situation in Huntington. That's the big elephant in the room where, again, Mike Desormeaux is in the 3rd year, finishing up his 3rd year of a 5-year contract. I presume he's going to get an extension, win or lose this ball game. Whereas Charles Huff has taken his team to 3 straight bowl games and now a 4th one, and he does not have an extension. How do you find that situation? I find it fascinating. Again, great for content, but it is, and he's not taking another job like Billy Napier did, right, where he's going to Florida. He's taking another job in the Sun Belt. It's with Southern Miss, if all reports are true. So
it's weird, man.
It is fascinating. Yeah.
If weird is the better word that I use. It's freaking weird because you don't see this, and it's all been out in the open. If reports are true, of course. I mean, look, I'm looking in the last minute of the ball game for Dennis Allen to be, announced as the Southern Miss head coach, and Huff, sign an extension. So who knows what'll happen? But seriously, this is kind of unprecedented for our conference. I mean, you saw Chadwell go to Liberty, which was weird because he was going to
Oh,
a Conference USA school with a lot of resources. But within your own conference, that it's almost like an unspoken secret that he's leaving you after a championship game this week. And he was quoted as saying, "Well, I want to be here, but Marshall has not made that offer."
no.
I mean, is he
Yeah.
lying or is like what's going on? So there's a lot to this story, but it's hard for me to understand if a guy is so unliked and just doesn't fit in at Marshall, but he wins a championship.
And,
I mean, I kind of like the guy, despite everything else. I don't know. It's just weird.
well, he doesn't have a contract. That's the thing. If
Yeah.
anybody would understand if he's not coming back, it would be his players. He's got a 1-year-old. He needs a job. I'm sure he's well compensated at Marshall. I guess $755,000. So it's not going to be like he's lacking food next week. But he still needs a job. He still needs a job.
Yeah. But going to, I mean, I guess Southern Miss is certainly in his eyes certainly a step up as well. But why isn't Marshall? That's what I'm confused about. Why isn't Marshall, offering him a contract at this late stage of the game?
I
What
mean,
is going
well,
on with that? What is the reason? That's what I kind of want to know.
it's not even the late stage of the game. And I know
It's
it's very
over.
different. He didn't have a contract going into the season. That is unseen, unheard of as well. Now, coaches don't hold out like that. But, I mean, and yes, this era of college football is different where the roster is, year to year. So it may not be that important in terms of, recruiting, although isn't the early signing day tomorrow today?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like all this stuff is happening. How do you commit to a school when you don't even know if the head coach is going to be there in 2 days?
Yeah. It is fascinating. All right, so then let's get to Mike Desormeaux. What do you think the plans are for that? Because I happened to mention on Sunday, the Cajuns, I don't want to lucked into it, and maybe Brian Maggard kind of saw this coming. But again, for those who don't know, don't follow the Cajuns, Mike Desormeaux is from the area, played high school football in the area, played quarterback for the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns, coached high school in the area, was a position coach on HUD staff, was kept over for Napier's staff, and now is the head coach. And I said, he may not be leaving anytime soon. I don't think he's going to do a John Summerall where he's taking a little bit more money or double the money before he gets a big time job, if that's what he wants. Whereas John Summerall may be just waiting for Kentucky because, I'm not even sure Dez is going to turn down, $5 or $6 million if that comes his way. But he just came out on Monday and says, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Of course, until the $5 million offer comes, which no one would blame him to. But it feels like, that the Cajuns have somebody who is not looking at greener pastures. And if greener pastures come, Nick, it's only because the Cajuns are really good.
Yeah, I agree, and it's kind of like Napier. When he started, there was talk about him going to another school, and we were just like, it's not the right time. This ain't the year. And then Florida came the next year, and we're like, okay, this makes sense. I think it would have to be that same kind of conversation for Dez, where it would have to really make sense. I mean, what school is he going to? I don't know if Dez would want to live. If West Virginia opens up, for instance, I don't know if he wants to live in West Virginia. So I don't know. You can pay the man enough. But if the right opportunity came along, I'm sure he would take a hard look at it. But you feel like I was going to make a Sean Clark comparison, but that's pretty bad because he just got fired for having a winning record. I don't think that's going to happen with Dez, but I think when you have a hometown guy that this is his dream was to coach here, that will take you a few years. It'll carry us for a few years for him being the most underpaid coach for a few seasons here at Louisiana. I mean, he was making around 700,000. That's as much as our basketball coach is making in his 15th year and 1-7. But besides that, Dez is one of the lower paid coaches in the Sun Belt. I think he's going to get a nice extension to bring him over $1 million, and I think he's also going to get a bump for his assistants. If history serves correct, and that's kind of how Maggard has handled it in the past, I think that's what you're going to see, and I think you'll see him here for a while. Now, that doesn't mean he'll be here forever. Because like you said, if a Kentucky calls and offers him $5 million a year, I love Louisiana, but I'm out of here, baby. So
Sure.
I think it would just have to make sense for Dez and really fit into that mold for him. But that could happen, but I would say not in the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, well, the Kentucky reference was John Sumrall. But my point was, I mean, I always thought, among others, I'm sure others thought, Billy Napier was not sticking around. Billy Napier was going to turn the Cajuns around. And if he did so, he would find that Power 5 job. I'm not sure, how quickly Desormeaux wants to get out of there, because all of a sudden, like you said, all of a sudden that pressure is on. Whereas, losing season is one thing, but I'm not sure. If Des wins 8 to 9 games on a regular basis and going to bowl games, that's not going to be bad.
Yeah, it'll be attractive. Like I said, I don't know if he's going to go to an Alabama as a head coach there, but you might have, a P5 team like you said, a Duke or Kentucky or something, a school like that makes sense for him. Then yeah, I could see that happening. But we have a little bit of an advantage. He's a hometown guy, so we're going to hold on to that as long as we can.
All right, we'll see when he gets extended. I would presume it would be here the week after the Sun Belt Championship game. All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll wrap up with Nick. We'll preview this Sun Belt Championship game, the Ragin Cajuns versus the Marshall Thundering Herd. It should be a good one. We'll do that right after I tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Dave Schultz and Nick Domingue on Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Nick, we're co-host with Jerry Hebert about with the Ragin Review podcast covering the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. All right, so how do we see this game going? It would seem to be the Cajuns offense versus the Marshall defense, except the Marshall defense hasn't played well the last couple of weeks. Mike Green, one of the better rushers, not only in the Sun Belt, but in America. And Nick, I wouldn't be surprised if he is the Sun Belt Player of the Year once Ben Wooldridge got hurt. What is your first thoughts on this ballgame?
Yeah, my concern is the interior defensive line has had some struggles the past few weeks in the run game. And you saw that pop up a little bit. They were able to do a good job in Monroe, but you certainly saw that against South Alabama and a couple of other times this season. So with a good running back like he is, you want to contain a guy as best you can because you're not going to shut him down. So it would be, depending on early in the game, how our interior defensive line looks. And another thing is that I've also seen these past few games where we come out, as one team, such as against South Alabama, and then in the second half of the ball game, make some nice adjustments and turn the table. So I think Marshall might come in a little bit hyped up after they just took that big, that big win over JMU. Hopefully this game won't be, 2-3 overtimes, but I feel like the Cajuns are in a good spot because, as you said, defensively, Marshall has had their struggles. If Chandler is Chandler and just doesn't take any high risk chances, I think we see a couple of turnovers from some of our linebackers who have gotten some nice, very timely turnovers this season. I think the Cajuns come out victorious in the end. I'd say, about 6 points, if I were just to give you a number right now, but I think it's going to be a close game to the end. So we'll see what happens.
Any update on the right tackle? What is it? George Jackson and running back Draylen Washington and Bill Davis, for a fact. Did he get banged up in the ULM game?
Who's that? Bill Davis?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he got banged up, but I think he was able to come back. I don't know that he saw the field at that point because it was a lot of Xylan. But I have not heard on the two other injuries that you asked me about. I know Dre was taking it easy this past week, and I think that's going to be key as well, is how healthy is our running back core because, you see 3 different looks from 3 different running backs, and not having Dre out there, I think, kind of hurt us a little bit last week, even though we pulled out a win. So hopefully he's going to be back up and running this week. Fingers crossed there. But from the injury front, I had not seen the depth chart yet, so not sure what they're looking at today.
I should mention, as Bill Davis actually he ran the final touchdown in, so he did come back in the game.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He did. Yeah, I forgot about that.
He's trying to run out the clock, and he bounced
Correct, and he
outside,
ran in.
doing
Yeah,
the touchdown. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess the other possible key injury, Keon Martin, did he bang his head again? It looked like he was walking off the field, physically healthy, but walking it off very slowly.
I think he came back into the game.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. So I'm not sure. Look, nobody's going to play healthy at this point. It's just how banged up are you? With Keon, obviously, we were really concerned a few games ago with that serious injury he took. But you know, if there's any, the guy's going to play. If there's any hope for him to like walk, if he's walking, he's playing. So I trust that our doctors would hold him otherwise. But I look for Keon to be a part of that game this week as well.
All right, I'm going to give you a softball because, you know, I have seen a lot of it on my timeline from the administration to the fans to the players, from you and Jerry and others, about packing Cajun Field, which I guess technically is the last game at Cajun Field. Next year, it's Our Lady of Lourdes Stadium. God, do I have to say that whole thing? So how do you see this crowd? And I'm not gonna blame anybody for not sitting in the rain, because I ain't sitting in the rain. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. If it rains during the game and there's half a stadium, that's okay with me. It is what it is. People have kids, people have work, they can't get sick. I'm not gonna blame anybody for that. But if it is a nice day out, and if it's cold, it's easier to dress for the cold than it is for the wet. So what are we expecting at Cajun Field?
Yeah, for sure. So I took a look at ticket sales. It looks like the end zone is pretty much sold out, because we do have one end zone with seating. The other side, the home, I guess, new home side, looks like it's filling up nicely as well. I didn't get too detailed into looking at which seats were available, but tickets are cheap. I mean, I think you can get a nice set of tickets right on the 40-yard line for like 35, $40. And when you're talking about championship game in college football, that's insane. So I think it's going to be a good turnout. The weather, last I looked, they said it would not rain on Saturday. They kind of pushed that. They pushed that back a little bit. So fingers crossed that is the case. But either way, South Louisiana in the humid cold can be bitterly cold, even though it's only 40 degrees. It feels like, Antarctica. So I'm sure a lot of people will be bundled up. As long as it doesn't rain, and I say as long as it doesn't rain all day and chase people away, I think we're going to have a good turnout.
When they hosted, when Napier and the Cajuns hosted, it wasn't exactly balmy that day, but it was dry, right? Wasn't it dry? They had a pretty good crowd, not probably as great as I had hoped.
Yeah, and I mean, what was it, 27 or 28,000 that we had for that game?
It wasn't bad. It was pretty good.
But you have to, relatively speaking, it was a 41,000 seat stadium, so that looks half empty, right? But when you think about it, it still holds the record for the most fans at a championship game. So, you have to put it in perspective a little bit and see it in that way. But look, I'll be disappointed if we don't sell 23,000 tickets. I mean, I bought 2 extra today just to give away, right? Okay. So hopefully that will help. Other people will do the same and try to get their families and such to come. But I think it's going to be a good turnout. Just, you never know. Like, Acadiana is a different place, and sometimes it's super special, and sometimes you just want to beat your head against the door and figure out why they're not showing up. So hopefully we're going to be happy this weekend.
Little fickle. All right, so you said 6-point game. You want to give me a score?
Oh man, you know what? I'm going to back off for that because you're making me nervous now, putting me on the spot. I'll say it's a 3-point game. I say Kenny the kicker. Marshall's going to make a late comeback and tie it up at 28. And then Kenny comes in and kicks a late field goal to win the game 31-28. Cajuns.
That's a great call. And then we get to see Maggard run from under the uprights once again.
Yeah. He was pretty high off the ground the last time I saw him do that. So,
he's fallen on his face, right?
Yeah, he's done that.
One. and then he leaped when Wake missed but landed on his feet. So, hey, Nick, really appreciate your time. Thanks for hopping on Locked On Sunbelt. Should be a whale of a ball game, and I don't think it should go unnoticed. This is Saturday night on ESPN, right? This is a 7:30 Eastern time zone game, 6:30 Central time zone local. This is an on ESPN ball game.
Yeah, and we have all day to tailgate. So those fans from Marshall that are coming down, don't bring any food. Just calm down, walk around. You'll get fed. Jerry and I will actually be out live doing a pregame and postgame show. Hopefully my connectivity works better than it is tonight. But I'm sure there'll be a couple of bugs. But we're gonna have a pre and post game there at the championship game. So if you're at the tailgate wherever you are, come find us, and we'll give you some time. And it should be a fun atmosphere, and we're really really looking forward to it.
He's Nick Domingue, co-host with Jerry Hebert of Ragin Review podcast covering the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. Thanks for your time, Nick, and enjoy the football.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate everything you do. Have a good one.